Thank you, Patricia. Next speaker in the set is Ned Brennan. Ned is Chief Executive Officer of Respond Housing Association. Ned's previously worked as a town clerk in Youghal and as a staff officer with Kilkenny County Council. He's educated in Presentation College Bray, University College Dublin, the Honourable Society of King's Inn, and holds a master's degree from UCC. Ned has been a representative of several government bodies. He's been a member of the Department of the Environment, Community and Local Government Working Group for the cooperative and voluntary sector from 2000 to 2009, and a member of the board of the Irish Council for Social Housing from 2011 to 2014. Respond as a housing association provide a nationwide service from 9 offices across the country, of course one here also in Galway in Oranmore. So I'd invite Ned to come forward and give his second and maybe a different view on the housing crisis.
Thanks, Martin. Good morning, ladies. Good afternoon now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have your lunch to look forward to after Hubert, so I probably am the aperitif for the final session today. Just tell you a little bit, 2 things I'm going to look at this morning. One is tell you a bit about Respond and the voluntary housing sector and what we do. And for the construction students, there's loads of lovely photographs of houses and estates, so that might whet your appetite a little bit. And then I'll talk a bit about, I suppose, carrying on from what Marion has spoken about this morning, the obstacles to the delivery of social housing from my perspective, and some suggestions as to how those obstacles can be overcome. Just to tell you a bit about Respond, we founded in 1982, some 34 years ago. We've built nearly 5,500 houses in that period of time, and we're currently managing a little over 4,000. We have a development programme of 1,400 to 1,700 units over the next 4 years, right across the country. And we manage houses in 23 of the 26 counties across the country. I suppose our housing stock kind of divides down into about 75% housing for families and 25% housing for older people. So over the period since our inception, the whole idea of social housing has developed a lot. I suppose a lot of the model that we use is based on the European model, so we've been moving in that direction over the years. So we're more about the provision of, you know, during the 70s, 80s and 90s, there was a lot of stigmatised, ghettoised social housing delivered in monotenure type delivery. We've tried to move away from that over the last 15 years in trying to develop more integrated type housing. So we've have a variety of houses that are delivered, and we try to get as good a mix as possible, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I suppose we're also unique in that we have our own in-house design team. It would be unusual for housing associations. Most housing associations would procure their services in relation to architecture and design from private practices. We have our own in-house design team and have had one for the last 20 years. So we provide the following services: design and master planning, procurement and construction, planning and design advice, and energy rating assessment. So we can take a project from a greenfield site and develop it right through to delivery of the keys. So I suppose that has given us some advantage over the years in that by virtue of the fact we have our own in-house teams, it means that we can be more streamlined and faster in delivery. So our teams consist of architects, architectural technologists, quantity surveyors and site agents. So we have the whole array of construction and design services and support staff that are required in the delivery of a social housing product. I'll give you a couple of examples now of some schemes that we have developed. This is an integrated scheme in Monaghan. consisting of 165 houses, which is a mix of units that are managed by Respond, local authority houses, and then affordable houses. This scheme was completed about 15 years ago, so that was at a time when the affordable housing scheme was available. So we have a good mix there in that we have family housing, we have housing for older people, and we have affordables. So that's the desire to bring in a market element, and so that's quite a large development, and all supported then by a community building. The community building we see as being the heart of the community, and it's essential. Most of our estates that we would have developed over the last 20 years have a community building because, we see our work commencing really when the tenants move in, and we engage with tenants in a whole variety of programs, which I will talk about later on. That's another integrated development in Middleton in County Cork of 91 units, a mixture of family units and local authority units that are managed by the local authority and some affordable units. And this is a regeneration scheme in Moyrott in Limerick, which were former local authority houses, 31 units, which were refurbished in 1997 by ourselves and converted and managed by ourselves. I suppose the change that we made there is also that we provided a community building, which is the heart of the community and provides a variety of services to that very deprived area. And also we developed a refuge service there for women and children who were out of home as a result of homelessness and a variety of other reasons. This is our biggest development in the country, which is 204 units in Tallaght Town Centre, right beside the Square Shopping Centre and a couple of minutes walk from the Lewis line. So really well served with services at public transport, schools and amenities. This is we developed between ourselves with the support of South Dublin County Council and the Order of St John of God, who provide 80 units there in that development for people with intellectual disability. So we have a variety of activities going on there. We have family units, we have units for older people, there are affordable units, and then there are the services that are provided by the Order of St John of God. As I mentioned a few moments ago, we really see our work beginning once the tenants move into the house. So our model works around developing and building self-reliant communities. A lot of housing associations just deliver housing and the delivery and management and maintenance of housing. We offer a different type of model where we really focus in on the delivery of support services to our tenants. So all of our tenants would undergo a pre-tenancy course of 6 to 8 weeks before they move into the houses, which creates for them an appreciation of community living and what their responsibilities are and what the landlord's responsibilities are. All of our developments have a community building, and we see that as the heart of the community where support programs for families and for children and young people can be developed. So we would follow a lifetime cycle where for new estates we would focus in on the delivery of preschool and after school programs, and then as the age demography on the estate changes, then we focus in more on youth clubs, support programs for men as in men groups, and then parenting programs, whether it be parenting skills, budgeting skills, household management. But it's all about providing the services to families to ensure that they have the necessary capabilities to be able to manage their own lives in a supportive type of way. Respond was the first housing association to pioneer the development of communal facilities on family estates. And as I say, they include a whole variety of support programs, particularly for children. I suppose the focus on children was twofold. One, that is engendered a regard, a grow for education from a very young age, on one hand, and then on the other hand, the strategy was to free up parents to be able to avail of second chance education in the morning time while children were being minded. And then the other cohort of accommodation that we provide is for older people, for special needs, whether it's people with disability, homeless people, and refugees for women and children. This is an older person's development in Youghal in County Cork called Shalom House. This was a Protestant asylum that was built in the 1820s and had fallen into disrepair. And we were invited in by a local Church of Ireland group to refurbish the development, which we completed in 1994. So it provides 24 self-contained apartments for older people there with support services. This is our latest development, which was only occupied by tenants last month. It's St John's College in Waterford, which is a former diocesan seminary, which we purchased in 2009. The construction of the project started in late 2013, early 2014. So the old seminary building has been refurbished, and we've also, which you'll see in a few moments, a new build of 22 units also on the site. This was a particularly challenging project because, as you'll appreciate, it is a protected structure and a listed building. So from that perspective, it was quite a high onus on us to ensure that we complied with all the requirements of a protected structure, both internally and externally. But it's turned out to be a fine building, and you can see more details of this leading project on our website. This is a regeneration project in Blackpool in Cork. These were the former local authority Glen Flats, which have now been developed into a mixed tenure development of 51 homes, consisting of 12 units of accommodation on the ground floor for families. This is a podium. This area here is a podium garden. Then we have 12 units of accommodation for families at ground floor level. Then we have 41 units of accommodation for older people. At the back, there's a 16-person group home for people with intellectual disability, which is managed by the Cope Foundation. And then on the top floor, we have an array of daycare facilities for older people that are living in the development and from the wider community. So we take in an average of between 20 and 25 people per day. There's a social program in relation to arts and crafts and things of that nature. There's a hot meal in the middle of the day. And then we've teamed up with the HSE, and they provide quasi-healthcare support as well. So there's a physiotherapy suite there, there's assisted bathing, there's podiatry and chiropody, and a counselling service. So while it's a facility for the people in it, it's a far more important facility for the wider community, because otherwise people from that side of the city would have to travel into the city centre to avail of those healthcare services, which they can now avail of at their own doorstep in this development. And that's just the variety of programs that we provide for older people. I suppose in the last couple of years we've very much focused in on activation programs for older people to try and combat social exclusion and isolation. So there's been a big focus on gardening, horticultural programs, Go for Life fitness programs, and programs around nutrition, which have all had very beneficial effects on our tenants living in these particular developments. So mixed tenure has been our main focus. This is another development in Ardru in Athy, which consists of nearly 100 units and also includes traveller accommodation. So it's very much a mixed tenure development with family homes, accommodation for older people, and then affordable accommodation as well. I think, you know, the way forward to try and end the stigma of social housing is to move more towards the development of mixed tenure estates. So I suppose in the current market, as has been outlined by Marion there, where there is such a lack of accommodation, I think there's probably more of an appetite for the development of good quality mixed tenure accommodation, as long as they're delivered at good locations that are well serviced, like the one I spoke about earlier on in Tala, where they're well serviced by schools, by shops, by public transport. transport. And I think, moving forward, I think we can also knit into these developments the delivery of private rental housing as well, where the facilities are good and the accommodation is of a high quality. This is an unfinished, a ghost estate in Tullow in County Carlow, which was bought from NAMA and refurbished by ourselves, and now is accommodating 53 families. The accommodation was to a very high, the quality of the housing was to a very high standard, but was unfinished. And we completed that in 2014, 2015, and as a result of the delivery of this development, we were actually able to wipe out the waiting list for the Tullow electoral area in County Carlow. A lot of the ghost housing or the unfinished estates have been taken up now, but this was certainly a very good example of how something that was a failure to an extent was able to be converted into something for the benefit of the local community. I'll now have a quick look at some of the challenges that we face in the delivery of social housing. I suppose these challenges that we face as a society, both from a personal, interpersonal point of view and also from an economic point of view. In the last assessment of housing needs, it said that there was 90,000 families in need of housing. There's an assessment being done next month, and it seems to indicate that we're moving more towards now the need probably about 140,000 families. There's currently 5,000 families homeless, including 1,500 children. A lack of private supply, as Marion has so eloquently outlined earlier on this morning, and a lack of Part 5. If 12,000 units were delivered last year and half of those 6,000 were once-off houses, that left probably about 6,000 that were going to come under the remit of Part 5. So that would deliver 600 houses in the whole economy. 600 houses at a time where there's a need probably for a minimum of about 6,000 social houses per year. So the delivery by the Part 5 mechanism is very insignificant. And then the slow approval processes. The Housing Strategy 2020, which was launched in November 2014, spoke about the delivery of 35,000 houses at a cost of 3.8 billion over a period of 6 years. It promoted mixed tenure development, and it saw that the needs of 75,000 households will be met by HAP, which is the Housing Assistance Payment, and that there was a programme of reform outlined for social housing delivery and management in Ireland, and that by 2020 local authority waiting lists would be cleared. Just a little bit of analysis of that. How achievable is 35,000 in the period of 6 years from last year, 2015? I think it's totally unachievable based on the output from the economy. And if you take a mechanism such as Part 5 as being identified as a major part of the delivery, it's just not going to happen. And even the figure of 3.8 billion has never been broken down as to actually how that amount is going to be, how it's going to be made available. A lot of the finance is up in the air. There is no strategic implementation programme per se of what's going to be delivered in each year, who's going to deliver it and how much it's going to cost. And a lot of this 3.8 billion is predicated on housing associations being able to leverage additional private finance, which really hasn't come to fruition at this point in time. How realistic is the focus on the private sector delivering? And based on the very slow increase in output, it's totally unrealistic that one could expect the private sector to ramp up and deliver what's expected. And particularly as Michael Stone was saying earlier on, in 2006, there was 30,000 young people in apprenticeships. Today, there's 6,500. A lot of the skills in the area of masonry and electrics and plumbing has been lost to the economy during the downturn period. People have emigrated to Australia and Canada and England, and maybe a lot of those won't come back. And if you don't have the skills for the delivery of accommodation, how are you going to deliver accommodation? So I feel that there's a major challenge facing the economy, not alone in the delivery of social housing, but also in the delivery of private housing. And a lot of this in relation to delivery of 75,000 houses under HAP is a sleight of hand in reality, because you're transferring people from the current rental subsidy scheme or under the RAT, which is the rental accommodation scheme, and supplementary welfare allowance. You're just transferring existing tenants from those programs into the HAP program. So you're actually not delivering any new units. You're just transferring people from one mode of subsidy to a new mode of subsidy. And one of the main pillars with the development of a cost rental model to attract landlords into delivering new accommodation. And as Marion has just pointed out, there's two landlords. For every one landlord that's entering the private rental sector, there's two leaving. So the proposition that we're going to have a cost rental model developed in this economy, I don't see it as being realistic. The results so far, government have provided 17,000 houses in the last year and a half, but most of those are transfer from supplementary welfare allowance to HAP, so actually no new units have been delivered. 2,500 local authority voids have been refurbished. The target for this year is 12,000 units, which is, I can't see how it's going to be met. The government has changed the requirement that approved housing bodies no longer need approval for the development of schemes of less than 20 units. They can be now approved of by the local authority without having departmental approval. The way forward. These are just a few proposals on ideas that might assist in greater delivery of social housing. The release of land banks, the establishment of a housing authority or a specialised vision in the Department of the Environment, the delivery of fast-track planning for social houses for a period of time under the same model as the strategic development zones that have been rolled out in the Docklands in Dublin and in South Dublin County Council. Those type of strategic development which would deliver planning, maybe, for a period of time to bring in this fast-track planning for a 5-year period. The increase of output from Part 5, a government guarantee for the borrowings of AHBs, the investment in new technologies. In Amsterdam, you can build a house in 83 days for €73,000 in the heart of Amsterdam, and that's because they embrace new technologies. As was mentioned by Michael earlier on, there's a lot of development of technologies off-site. So in situ building with the use of casing, the construction of roofs, the construction of pods for bathrooms and things of that nature would really speed up the delivery of housing in this country. And then if the government was to make seed funding available for AHBs, it would assist them in enhancing and speeding up the development of their programme. And then the development of support and facilities for a functioning housing sector. The supply of land is a major challenge to the AHB sector. There's quite an amount of land that's held by state departments, that's held by local authorities, and that's held by NAMA, which isn't made available for the delivery of social housing. We're proposing the establishment of an agency that would manage the identification, and a lot of it has been done already, of land banks, and then the creation of a pipeline to direct that land bank into delivery of social housing. Capacity building, as I've alluded to a few moments ago, the development of a single point or central unit. There's an enormous amount of bureaucracy in getting a project approved between the local authority and the Department of the Environment. I just gave an example there earlier on. We have an 11-unit scheme in Cork City, which we first started planning 11 years ago. We have a tender which is a year old yesterday, and we still haven't got across the line to get on site. There's toing and froing, there's red tape. Every time a series of queries are raised by the department and you answer them, a new series of queries are raised. So it just slows down the whole process in the delivery of housing. The new funding schemes under CAF and Payment and Availability Agreement are working quite well, but there is a need for further investment, and we're proposing the establishment of an off-balance sheet financial vehicle, an SPV, which would allow the larger AHBs to come together to be able to access bond finance in the European market. And we're also proposing that under Part 5, which was the 2000 Planning and Development Act, where there was a provision for 20% social and affordable housing. That was reduced under the new Planning Act last year to 10%. We're recommending that it goes back to 20%. That would have some impact in delivery. And then there's a whole variety of choice and housing support programs, which I've kind of outlined earlier on in relation to supporting families in the delivery of accommodation. Financial supports are important in relation to a government guarantee, which certainly create a level of stabilisation for the AHB sector. The AHB sector is new and I suppose is untested in this economy. Compared to the UK, where housing associations have been delivering houses for 60 years and bank finance have been readily available for the last 30 years. We don't have the same housing economy here in Ireland, and the private lending institutions are nervous about lending because it's a whole new scenario. We're maintaining if there was a government guarantee, which would never be called on in reality, because if a housing association was to fail, then the local authority would step into the shoes and take over the management of the property, or would hand it on to another housing association to manage. Partnerships are important. Partnerships have existed for the last 30 years with local authorities, and it's important that these partnerships are further developed, particularly in relation to local authority stock transfers or the delivery of maintenance support programs to local authorities. There's an enormous amount of duplication in our sector. You know, each local authority has a housing management system. Each AHB has a housing management system. We have a duplication of staff. We have a duplication of maintenance functions. So the coordination and delivery of one-stop shop type support in relation to the management and maintenance of housing would certainly lead to economies of scale and the streamlining of delivery. And we're strongly of the view that in relation to delivery of social housing, that there should be social contracts also weaved in to construction contracts, which would benefit local employment in such areas as employing young people in the apprenticeship area. So that completes my few words this morning. That's the other side of St. John's College. That's the new build, the 22 apartments besides the old seminary. So thank you all very much for your time and attention this morning.